purpose of life is not to be happy. It's to be useful, to be honourable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. I lived on Murray Street, Cairns, North Queensland, Australia. A street and area marred by strongly held negative perception. A street, when I give my address to the taxi driver, he would screw up his face and say, Murray Street. A street that bus drivers used to avoid. A street that people say, don't live in. Don't walk down at night. Just don't. Well, we were told more than once not to buy in the ghetto, to stay away from the west side. But the thing is, I just really loved where we lived. I mean, it's close to the city, great parks, and my sister was a hop and skip away. It was never as bad as people made out. And how would they know anyway? They didn't live there. My life was normal, uneventful, as in Groundhog Day, a series of events on repeat. Every morning I'd pull out of the drive at 8:20, I'd close my gate and I'd wave to my sister, who was closing her gate. And then again in the afternoon I'd pull into the drive at 5:20, open my gate, and again wave to my sister, who was opening her gate. When I reflect on what my life used to be like, the song Little Boxes by Peter Seeger comes to mind. Identical houses, identical routines, no connection, mindless instead of mindful living, security in my little box. They say one door closes, another will open. A social worker by trade and at the mercy of the newly elected government, I was one of the stats. I was made redundant. My door had shut. My identity, my self-value, gone. December 19, 2014. I received a panic call from my friend in Sydney. Where are your children? Where are your children? Where are your children? Oh my God, can you see them? Can you see them? Are they okay? A horrific tragedy involving the loss of local children. It's a date and an event etched in all of our hearts, all with different memories of what we were doing, of how we found out, yet all united in grief and disbelief. According to Tim Moore, an expert in placemaking, a child's well-being is affected by their perception of their neighbourhood. So what Tim Moore is saying is a neighbourhood that is generally characterised by community neglect, like my community, Manoora, negatively affects a child's outcome over and above that of their family socio-economic status. So here we were as a community dealing with these negative perceptions for decades. And for decades, these negative perceptions have been holding back our children, our leaders of tomorrow, from reaching their potential. And now we had to deal with a tragedy. I wasn't sure how we would get past it. How would we cope? So newly unemployed, feeling dejected, despondent and disconnected from my community, I decided to use my social work skills, knowledge, connection and passion to help rebuild my community. I decided to step out of my little box, to look beyond my Groundhog Day existence. I decided to open a new door because I believe you reap what you sow. So our lives, our community are like a garden. And like a garden, they don't come readily made. You have to grow them. They require hard work, elbow grease, roll up the sleeves approach. They require planning, patience, nutrients, water. They require love. Committed and invested to harvest positive change in our community, a handful of residents banded together and the Manoora Community Garden seed was planted. Once an unused parcel of land in the locally known back streets of Cairns. Unutilised and untapped potential just sitting there. Gorgeous mature trees that provide cooling shades from the warm tropical sun. It was ripe with possibility. My community is a community that ranks in the 4th percentile nationally for social disadvantage. A community suspicious of any government intervention. A community spurred out of its boxes by tragedy. And 2 years on, we're a community that has begun to sprout, flourish, growing in numbers, strength, and firm friendships. Through positive action, we have created 40 garden beds. We have planted 7 varieties of chili. I mean, come on, how hot is that? Tropical delights, mango, avocado, passion fruit and dragon fruit. Island staples, cassava, taro, abaca, eggplant, pumpkin.
And the classics of citrus, tomato, mulberry, pawpaw, and so much more.
Did the garden build itself? No. One neighbour at a time, we started to check in with one another. We started to weave the fabric of our community into something stronger. We started to believe. The soil of our foundation had been turned, and so we began changing the perception of our reality. Get involved. It's easy. We have a range of roles. No matter your skill set, your time, or your interest, there's always something you can contribute. Take me, for example. I'm extremely poor in daylight hours. I've recently gained a day job, I have 2 small children, and a husband who works away for half the year. But I have evenings that allow me to contribute. So I'm not out there swinging a shovel and planting produce, but I'm planting money trees, writing funding applications, vision, ideas. When I stop and reflect on the fruits of our labour, I can see beyond the fresh and tasty produce. Connected outside the typical circle, the identification and development of community leaders, an increased sense of pride, ownership, stewardship, accomplishment. Yes, these fruits have been bountiful. So the courage to step outside my little box. Well, this courage has yielded a harvest of unintended outcomes I could never have imagined. I feel connected to my community like no other. I can't articulate to you what that connection feels like and what it means. Out of the workforce for over 3 years, the garden fruited the job of my dreams. And touchingly, my neighbours, my community, they cheered me on. My success was our success. We had become a village invested in one another. I'd like to introduce you to John Gartside. John has been a fixture of Murray Street for the past 20 years. He's affectionately referred to as the Mayor of Murray Street, and for very good reason. He knows everybody, and everybody knows John. G'day, John. How's it going, mate? Now, the pride that John feels about our garden is palpable. He walks taller. He wakes each day with purpose And he has carefully collected every news clipping and sent them to relatives near and far, and all for a pat on the back and a good job, mate. John is the very essence and backbone of our garden. He is growing hope and optimism that things are changing. And then there's Andre, John's honorary garden son. Now, Andre's always had an interest in sustainable living. However, renting, he's never had an opportunity to get in and get his hands dirty. When Andre said he first discovered the garden, he became obsessed. He said, "I feel like I've found my purpose." I cannot describe the pride and satisfaction I feel from building, planting out, and harvesting a bed of great food, let alone eat it. We've come a long way since the first turning of the soil. We've built relationships with our neighbouring schools and organisations. We've celebrated with community gatherings in the garden, and we've raised funds. But most importantly, and most fortunately, we have found ourselves an absolute legend. We have found ourselves a garden champion, a gardening icon, the hairy host, the king of compost, Costa. Now, Costa ignited hope and excitement into the hearts of the 90 smiling faces that attended our garden opening. And he passionately preached, inclusion is community. And he spoke about the garden as a structure to grow. A lot more than produce, he said. If we share the recipes, then we share the health infusion, and we need to infuse health on all levels, mentally, physically, and emotionally. From one harvest to one casual afternoon natter to one fruiting tree, the hum of positivity is undeniable. Through shared experiences, we are weaving an emotional yarning mat stronger than any individual box we previously felt safe in. So get involved. Expand your network. Meet people you would ordinarily never have an opportunity to meet. Grow your sense of belonging. Connect through people and place, through shared experiences. Remember, your perception is your reality. Well, they say gardening is good for the soul. And we have certainly found at the Manoora Community Garden it to be good for the whole. One seed, one plant at a time, we have living proof that communities are resilient. There is growth after tragedy. There is hope. Now, old mate Emerson said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy." Well, I have found that by living honourably, by living with compassion, that happiness blooms. We used a garden. What will you use to reinvigorate your community?